We're going to be talking to Nate Davis with Plant City Mortgages, in the first part of the show today to talk about how the government shutdown is going to impact mortgages and consequently the real estate market. But again, we're here to answer your questions. Phone number 855-970-WFLA. So, Nate, we've had a lot of questions, kind of popping up about this as the shutdown kind of extends even further and further. Right. And I think the first thoughts were, okay, are FHA and VA loans, because they're government backed, are they going to close? Are they okay? Yep. And then, of course, what are some of the other complications of a government slowdown on people, buying homes, closing on homes, getting mortgages, refinances, all those different aspects. There's a lot of complications that come into play with the shutdown.
Yeah, and this is something that's obviously, it's kind of a unprecedented scenario. It's not like in lending they say when the government shut down, refer to page 18 of the handbook, and this is how you handle it when the United States government goes out of business.
Right.
So basically, to get the gist of it is you got to understand that the mortgage market, about 90% of the mortgage market is predicated and based upon the secondary market. So what happens is all these lenders out there, they issue loans that can be sold back to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. And that's a secondary market. So what happens is when they sell those loans to them, they have to sign and guarantee certain representations and warranties on those loans. And part of that is that all the information is verified to be true and accurate, and that's where the government shutdown comes into play. So lenders still have money, and we are still lending funds. However, in some scenarios, the shutdown of the government impacts their abilities. So, for example, the IRS, there is a form that about a majority of all loans out there, I'd say 99% of them these days, the borrower will sign a 4506T form that allows the lender to verify a copy of their tax returns with the IRS to ensure that what they're providing is accurate. Back in the day, someone could get on Photoshop and whip up a tax return that said they made $1 million a year.
Right.
And if there's no check and balance in place, they could, fraudulently get a loan. So this tax return transcript is required on most loans, and and that is currently now not available.
Right.
So lenders can still technically lend on that money, but should that tax return come back and there be any disparity between what they base their loan upon and what comes back,
then the secondary
they're on the
market
hook.
won't.
Yeah, they just bought a loan for 30 years, literally.
Right.
They own that loan now at a very low rate, mind you. So now, don't get me wrong, there are exceptions that can be made. For example, the gentleman that works 40 hours a week and he has pay stubs and he gets W-2s, and they just, he doesn't have any other side business or nothing like that at all. That's pretty straightforward. So they are going out on a risk by still funding these loans, despite not being able to get the 4506T results back, because that is occurring. But they are taking a risk. Now, if someone is self-employed, for example, that's a risk they are not willing to take.
Right, a little more complicated. They need to look at every
there's no
dollar
third
going
party.
in and dollar going out.
Well, there's no third-party verification. At least on a regular borrower, at least you have a W-2 statement. That's there.
Right.
And with that, you can take a few minor assumptions and probably be safe. There's also risks they're taking too. For example, if someone files their returns, even if they get a regular base-paying job, provide the W-2s, if they deduct money on their tax returns for unreimbursed employee expenses, that's like an expense that a lot of people don't know about, and it bites a lot of people in the loan process if they're not aware of it. But basically, that means they're writing off expenses. They're saying, hey, for me to earn this amount of money I earned through my employer, I had to take on these expenses. Maybe they're writing off gas or auto use or whatever, and that is a negative adjustment to their income. And if it's significant enough, it can actually take a deal that was otherwise an acceptable approval deal and turn it into a denied loan.
And so in terms of that, there are banks that are still closing loans because they'll take on that risk depending on the borrower, whether they're employed or self-employed, how quote-unquote vanilla they are.
We are authorized to fund for about 18 different national lenders, and out of those, I would say 10 of them are making those exceptions. So we're actually able to do those now, and a lot of other entities out there should be as well. Everyone's kind of interpreting it different. Some places said absolutely not. That's a risk we're not willing to take, and they just won't do it, period. They'll accept your loan, they'll process your loan, they'll approve your loan, but they won't fund it until these transcripts are back. And that's very, very important to know, because if you're applying for a loan right now, and they're not going to tell you that up front, because they're just going to hope that they keep getting applications and hope it works out by the time your close date comes around.
Right.
But that's a question you really should be asking people up front is, the lender you're working with, do they require the tax transcripts for your loan scenario? We like I said, we are using all the waivers that people are using, but some places I'm very well aware of are not.
Right. So again, you're listening to the Duncan Duo Real Estate Show. If you have questions about this, how the government shutdown is impacting real estate closings and the real estate market, give us a call, 855-970-WFLA. Again, it's 855-970-9352, and we can answer your questions live on the air today, or anytime we aren't on air. Those calls do go to our real estate office. So Nate, one other point, kind of on that same token. FHA, VA loans, a lot of concerns from people out there about whether or not FHA loans and VA loans are going to be impacted. I think some of this ties into the same thing, but also, maybe describe a scenario where someone's already gone through the whole process and they're just a few days away from closing. Transcripts are already in, all that. Any impact on those closings?
No, not at this point. Like I said, we're kind of in uncharted territory. By this point, we have closed a ton of VAs, FHAs since this shutdown has occurred. So we have not experienced any of that at this point. Our VAs and FHAs are going through just fine, unless the borrower who's coincidentally getting a VA or FHA loan is self-employed, because that brings in the tax transcripts again.
What about people working for the government? What's the impact on them? Because technically, they're not, if you ask them for,
Right.
paycheck stubs and things like that,
Right.
Those folks, I would assume, have a negative impact or a risk
Yeah,
as well.
It's kind of like someone going on leave of absence. It's an underwriter call, but I think those are being made in their favor at this point. If they've gotten their last pay stub and we can document the shutdown and things of that nature, that's typically fine. The program that is dead in the water, though, dead in the water, is if you are getting a USDA loan. USDA loan is a loan program for rural properties. It's a zero-down loan program.
And when he says rural properties, it really means rural areas. So
Yes.
when you're thinking about what properties qualify for a USDA loan, you're looking out, East Hillsboro, parts of, Lithia, I think some of Brandon,
Dover,
little pockets of Brandon, little
Riverview.
pockets of Dover,
Yep.
Riverview, and
Ruskin.
then up Wesley Chapel. You've got
Right.
some up in the northern part of Pasco County. You've got Wesley Chapel. You've got, I think, some maybe even Land O'Lakes.
Right.
So you're looking at areas not necessarily in the city of Tampa, but kind of out in the burbs a little bit.
Yeah, you can go to plantcitymortgages.com, and there's a link for USDA that actually shows you an overview of a map of the areas that are highlighted that these
Right.
are good and these are not for
Right.
USDA. But
So the USDA loans are just down for the count right now.
That's correct. USDA is a loan program where the underwriters have to go through the file, lender has to completely approve it, and then at the very end they send it off to USDA, which is a government office, to give it its final
Seal of
stamp of
approval.
approval. Yes, that's right. So, and currently, even before the government shutdown, they were taking about 30 days. So you go through the entire loan process, which should be 30 days or less, and then, and only then, it would go to the USDA department, and that is, their turn time depends on their volumes, and they were out to 30 days before the government shutdown. So people were waiting there 20-something days. So imagine 50-something days, and then, boom, we're closed.
Right.
When are you going to be open? No one can tell you that because no one's there to answer the phone.
Right.
It's just literally closed.
Closed.
Stop. And now, the concern is when they open back up, these guys have so many employees. They're not a profit-driven company. There's no overtime. So when they open back up,
How
can you
far
imagine?
is the lag time?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's going to be
yeah.
astronomical.
So I would say anybody who's doing USDA loan, you should seriously be looking at other options. If you can come up with a 3.5% down payment, go FHA, other options like that to keep your deal moving forward.
And outside of that, what are any other things you can think about that are that the government shutdown is impacting? Obviously, the tax return transcripts, the USDA loans are a no-go, and then of course the the income of people that are employed by the government that are off right now, kind of being impacted a little bit. Anything else you could think of that's important for consumers to know about the shutdown?
Well, you're going to hear a lot of, you hear a lot of misinformation. Every time something happens, everyone, comes out and reacts before sorting through the details. And this is something that could continue to evolve. I'm sitting here saying right now, hey, the VA loan program is rolling just fine, so is FHA. But after so much time, maybe they start peeling back different resources, and that could change. It's kind of an evolving story. But the primary concern right now that is happening is that your USDA loans are dead in the water. Also, the tax transcripts, like I said, that is really big because you can have a regular job, have a side business, and you're part of the group of self-employed.
USDA loans right there.
Yeah, they're cooked. They are cooked. Like the beef, they are cooked.
Yeah, so again, you're listening to Duncan Duo Real Estate Show. If you got questions about any of this, give us a call, 855-970-WFLA. Again, it's 855-970-9352. Interestingly enough, the government shut down the flood insurance, and then, of course, just seasonally, article came out from the Times and just, evaluating these statistics. you know, from August to September, pretty significant drop in the number of home sales. Prices softening a little bit. First time we've seen that in 7 or 8 months. And I think that, again, some of the dialing back might be good for the market a little bit. You know, we certainly don't want to recreate what caused the bust. You know, there's flood insurance hikes that has scared people away. The government shutdown is spooking people. And while these necessarily may not have a huge impact for that particular person, so we had a sale fall apart this week, not because the flood insurance was so astronomically high, but because the consumers fear that the flood insurance regulations were going to hurt the market so much that prices were going to devalue. So the government shutdown, you know, is certainly impacting that. You've got a large push from Floridians, from, you know, Florida politicians, from lobbyist groups to get the, you know, the National Flood Insurance Program that went through this whole overhaul that's going to cause, you know, some people's rates to go up a little bit and then a few people's rates to go up a whole heck of a lot. There's been a big push to get that you know, either extended back, the changes pushed back a while until they can get solid reform. But obviously, while Washington shut down, that's another thing that's impacting our market right now from the government shutdown, because they you know, Florida can't have a voice in getting the, you know, the flood insurance stuff redesigned or modified. So that's another thing that's impacting our market. And I think naturally we always see a bit of a slowdown.
Yeah,
you know, you see a bit of a, we always see a lull, kind of October, November seems to be slow. December's always on fire
every year,
for us.
Yeah, every year, September is a little dip, and then October, fire again.
Yeah.
And August was our busiest month ever.
Yeah, and I think, again, the key to that is people understanding, like right now, there's a lot of things happening that are slowing down the market for the next couple of months. Some of it's seasonal, some of it's just government shutdown, flood insurance, rates going up. You know, a lot of factors kind of slowing things down a little bit. But some of it is seasonal, and that starts to pick up as people want to close by the end of the year. So October picks up in terms of, you know, people writing contracts, going under contract, putting their home on the market, but those closings don't end up happening until November, December. So it's a seasonal fluctuation that we're fortunate that we don't have as huge of a seasonal fluctuation as people up north.